Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my show, Geopolitics, Frontline. I am your host, Major Abhik Choudhury. And in this episode, I shall be talking about one of the greatest inflection points in the modern military history of India, something which I was lucky enough to be a part of, and that is Operation Sindoor. Now, most of you would be wondering, why did I say that Operation Sindoor is one of the greatest inflection points in the modern military history of India? Well, to understand that better, we'll have to take a look back at what is the history of India-Pakistan conflicts. You'll see that India has been battling with Pakistan-based terror for decades now. Some of the most heinous attacks on India, such as the IC-814 hijacking, the 2001 Parliament attack, the 2000 blasts in the Red Fort, the 2005 Diwali bomb blasts, so on and so forth. Multiple heinous attacks upon attacks. The 2611, the 711, they're countless. There is no end to it. And yet, India had been handling Pakistan with a kid glove. And what did India prefer to do at that time? India used to prefer to do, number one, Kadi Ninda. That is a very strong condemnation, some discussions, some negotiations, and sometimes even go in for a joint investigation. Did any of that yield any results? None. And why was all of this done? This was done in hopes that the Paki establishment would be ashamed of itself. But do you really think that Pakistan would be ashamed of itself? This in itself is a delusion as grand as expecting a pig to walk out of its sty and take a shower. Please understand this. It is the same set of people who have legitimized 10-year-old boys in the name of tradition called Bachabazi. Anyways, how they deal with constipation is between the men of their country. That being said, post Uri in 2016, India saw a change of gear when it came to dealing with terrorists being exported by Pakistan. It was for the first time that we saw military action being initiated against these jihadi pigs. And yet, there was a red line which India had still not crossed. But before we go into the details of the same, let us try and understand what tipped India over. On 22nd April 2025, at around 14:23 hours, 3 jihadi pigs belonging to an organization known as the Resistance Front, which happens to be a front for the Lashkar-e-Toiba, which is a Pakistan-based terror group, entered into the quaint Baisaran Valley in Pahalgam in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Over here, they did something very dastardly, something which is very reminiscent with what the Pakistan Army did during Operation Searchlight. They pulled down the pants of the male tourists, they checked their genitalia, they asked them to recite the kalma, and when they were certain that these tourists were not Muslims, they were brutally executed. This cowardly act of terror was planned by a pig known as Saifullah alias Langra. And this entire attack can be directly attributed to the speech given by the then General, now Field Marshal Asim Munir at the Overseas Paki Conference held in Islamabad between 13th to 16th of April 2025. Here, he had reiterated that Kashmir is the jugular vein of Pakistan. Well, now you'd all be wondering, why would he say something this stupid? Well, you have to understand something, that over the past few years, the Pakistan Army and General Asim Munir in particular had seen their popularity dwindle very drastically. If you would look back at history, you will notice that almost a year before making this speech, General Asim Munir had effected the arrest of the then Prime Minister Imran Khan. And Imran Khan's popularity across the backbone of Pakistan, that is Punjab, had led to massive number of riots happening all across the state and also across the country. This was for the first time that the Paki population had stood up to the army and they had attacked the house of the corps commander in Lahore. That, coupled with the dead economy, the crumbling infrastructure, the extreme poverty, extreme unemployment, and a reduction in the amount of bheek that Pakistan was getting, had resulted into a requirement for General Asim Munir to create a distraction. And what better than to provoke India? He was very well aware that any act of terror on India will see a swift and strong retaliation. When his terrorists in Pahalgam had made that statement to one of the survivors that go and tell Modi about this, neither them nor Asim Munir had imagined the scale at which not only Mr. Modi but the entire country is going to respond. As a befitting response to the cowards sitting in Rawalpindi, India did something which it had never done before. A red line which had sustained itself across 4 wars and countless terror attacks had been breached. And that was the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty. Now that sent shockwaves across Pakistan. Some buffoons started rattling their nuclear fangs. Some started calling it an act of war. But one thing was certain, that the already battered agrarian economy of Pakistan, 80% of which depended on the water from the Indus water system, was about to be pounded harder than Asim Munir when he was 10 years old. All trade was stopped, all visas revoked, all Paki nationals living inside of India were being deported out, and all Paki artists and their content was banned. All Paki military personnel were declared as persona non grata, and a 30-member diplomatic mission was sent all across the world. India had drawn the first blood, and the effect was clearly visible. First, the TRF, which had claimed responsibility for this cowardly attack, suddenly changed its tune and said that its website had been hacked and it had not carried out any attacks on India. And then the Paki establishment claimed that it was victim of some cooked up false flag operations by India, and that India's retaliation to this cowardly terror attack was unjust, unfair, unilateral, politically motivated, and devoid of any merit. The Pakis were playing from the terror handbooks of the Hamas and the Hezbollah. Strike first, then feign ignorance, and then try and hide behind some cooked up false narratives of victimhood. But was it going to work this time? I say no. Once the Pakis were certain that their false narrative was not finding any buyers in India, they decided to try and match India action for action. Well, what did they do? First thing they did was revoked all Indian visas. They evacuated all the Indians living over there. They closed their airspace to Indian aircrafts. They stopped all trade. They started saber rattling about the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty. And of course, they threatened that they were going to cancel the Shimla Agreement. Did any of this action bear any fruits for the Pakis? Well, no. India was still not coming to the negotiating table. And this silence was rattling the entire Paki establishment. So what would they do? Like a monkey trying to grab a banana, Pakistan climbed up the escalation matrix. Pakistan army started violating the ceasefire at the line of control. Their mouthpieces were going crazy, talking about war and nuclear war on media and social media. And of course, there came countries which wanted to mediate between India and Pakistan. But what's really funny is that India had still not fired a single shot. It's just that it is a common knowledge from all the experience gained post Uri and Pulwama that Pakistan, with this act of terror, was in for a spanking of its lifetime. And then the greatest fears of the Islamic Terrorist Republic of Pakistan came true. On the intervening night between 6th and 7th of May, at approximately 0145 hours, 9 Paki terror camps were struck. These were not random locations of the map. These were well thought out, recceed and well planned targets which had hit the nerve center of the Paki terror industry. Sites such as Markaz Subhanallah in Bawalpur or Markaz Toiba in Muridke, where the planning for some of the most heinous terror strikes on India were carried out, be it the IC-814 hijacking, the 2001 Parliament attack, or the 26/11 attack on Mumbai. Camps in Sialkot, Muzaffarabad, and Barnala were identified as key hubs for fanatical indoctrination and recruitment. Meanwhile, the Sajal facility at Tera Kalan functioned as a major weapon storage site, and locations in Kotli and Muzaffarabad served as forward launch pads for infiltration into India. Right upon carrying out these strikes, which severed the spine of the Paki terror machinery, India had conveyed its stance to the world through a press release and to the Pakis through a DGMO call. India was very crystal clear. India wanted to dismantle the Paki terror industry and did not wish to escalate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this video so far. Do stay tuned for our next episode upon Operation Sindoor, where we'll be talking about what exactly and how exactly it all went down, what was India's response, and how exactly did that impact Pakistan. Lastly, before I leave, I would like to congratulate 177 Medium Regiment, the Thambi Tigers, a very happy 60th Raising Day. And trust me, they live up to the name of Thambi Tigers. Jai Hind and Vanakkam.